In July of 1967, Ohio established the County Boards of Mental Retardation. At the time, in Butler County, there were school-age classes in operation in a few local churches, and adults participated in programs at Goodwill. In 1968, the board had its first meeting and hired its first superintendent, Philip Estes.
There were already 6 classes operating in Butler County for children who had, at that time, an IQ, intelligence quotient, below 50, which meant they were either moderately, severely, or profoundly retarded. At that time, Ohio had a law that if you had an IQ below 50, you could be legally excluded from public school education because of an inability to profit from public school attendance.
Funding was needed to hire staff and expand the programs. In 1969, taxpayers passed an operating levy, and in 1970, taxpayers passed a construction levy to build a school and adult workshop. Before Hamilton Center and Middletown Center opened, an adult workshop was located at a warehouse in New Miami. A nonprofit board called the Butler County Adult Training Center was started. On February 7, 1973, Fair Acres School opened. Dr. Fred Valerius, MRDD's former superintendent, was a teacher.
And that's one of those images that's kind of stuck in my head of the students coming in and those doors opening. It was like their whole feeling of self-worth and self-esteem just jumped dramatically.
At Fair Acres School, students were taught vocational and social skills. The children participated on sports teams and went on outings into the community. In the early 1970s, while school-age children were attending Fair Acres, adults were seeing an increase in services too. In May of 1973, the Adult Center at Fair Acres opened. In 1974, the Middletown Adult Training Center opened. Also at this time, 2 operating levies were passed by voters to continue the programs at Fair Acres and the adult workshops. Early intervention programs began in the mid-1970s. In the late 1970s and early 80s, attitudes began to change about how to educate children with special needs.
As we got into the mid-70s and Fair Acres was a dream, that pretty much is what started hitting us. This is fantasy. We got this beautiful facility. We got a swimming pool, which no other school in the county had. But what are we prepping the students for? Even the employees in the adult program were saying, you know, these folks are coming to us and they're not really ready to work. Well, part of the problem we saw is, well, maybe they shouldn't be here in the first place. Why do they need to be in a separate setting even though it's very nice?
In 1979, the first school-age students were integrated into public schools and the Fair Acres school programs were phased out. By 1991, all Butler County school-age children were integrated into their public school system.
In 1973, there was a development of a philosophy of deinstitutionalization, in that people who were living in state institutions was a recognition that most of them didn't need to be there.
During the 1980s, almost a dozen homes and care facilities were opened for Butler County residents, such as the 7 Mile Group Home, Millville Group Home, and the Fairfield Center. Hamilton Center opened in 1983. Liberty Center opened in 1989. The board's nonprofit organization was renamed Miami Valley Industries. The 90s saw improvements to the board's residential programs. A greater emphasis was placed on supporting individuals out in their community, whether it be to live, work, volunteer, or play. Case management services were in full swing, offering support coordination and quality assurance programs. Programs for community resources, leisure recreation, and family focus began. In 2000, Fair Acres School was rededicated as the Janet Clemens Center. Work continued at the 2 adult workshops, and an increasing number of people were hired in the community. More and more people expressed the desire to live on their own.
Parents have always been the key advocate for their son or daughter, but now adults are advocating for themselves. And we have a large group of adults who meet regularly, have projects, and give us input about our policies and programs. They actually have requested that we drop the words mental retardation from our name. So I see in the future that we'll see more and more of our policies and practices affected by the opinions of the self-advocates. They're learning to express themselves.
With all of this amazing progress over the last 40 years, it's hard to imagine how the board's programs will look in another 40 years. The possibilities are endless for the people served by the Butler County Board of MRDD. Perhaps the sweetest story of integration and acceptance in Butler County is the love story of Sean and Heather O'Grady. 40 years ago, it would have been unheard of and thought impossible for two adults with mental retardation to be married, live on their own, and work full-time.
I found out on day 2 that Sean had Down syndrome. Didn't have any idea the first day, but of course it just seemed like my world shattered. And then my husband arrived, and when he came, he said, he's still my son, we'll still play ball, we'll still go fishing. And after that, we just decided that we were going to take him as far as we could go. And somebody had told us, don't set limits. So that's been the byword of our life, is don't set limits, and we just can't believe how far he's come. Yep. Well, we were afraid that everything ends at 22. The formal school age is 22, and at that time he was in a special soccer league, and that ended when he was 22, and I just pictured the rest of his life just there, you know, never dreaming that it continued on. We've always called him Mr. Sunshine because he's always been happy.
Yes, I am.
Well, when I first met Sean, I met him at the Footstool Club. There's a club when people have dances.
So did you fall in love right away?
Oh, yes, you did.
Yes, I did. I said, oh my. He said, when I first saw Sean, and I said, oh my word, this is my dream, and I would like to date him, but I want to say it quietly because I don't want to embarrass him from a lot of people.
Their lives are so full. They have better lives than a lot of normal people have because they have the circle of friends that MRDD has, the activities that brings these kids together. The parents are our friends, and so we have a nucleus of support group right there. And they're all loving, caring people, and we have a wonderful time with them. And these kids are busy. You don't like to be called kids because she says I'm a married woman. I said, I'm sorry, you're always going to be our kids.
That's
you know?
right.
But anyway,
With the grown-up.
with the grown-up, they play softball in the spring. There's a golf league in the summer. There's picnics. There's job club. There's friendship club. There's all ARC activities. The Optimist Club does things for them. GE sponsors dances for them. Their lives are so full. I mean, it's just wonderful. As a parent, I couldn't be more grateful for the things that Butler County has provided for us, really. It's been a dream.